Before you can talk with someone in Russian, you've got to memorize thousands and thousands of strange Russian words. Does it feel like your brain is going to explode from the stress? Don't be surprised. Many people who study Russian have the same problem. Hi, I'm Dennis. Welcome to Learning to Know Russian. Thank you for joining us. I've got good news for everyone who struggled to learn Russian words and blamed it on having a bad memory. I don't think there's anything wrong at all with your memory. Here's why. Let's imagine you decided to learn 1000 Russian words so that you can hold a basic conversations in Russian. You are a pretty smart guy and you have got tons of motivation. This won't be too hard, right? Let's get started then. The first thing you'll need to know is that Russian nouns change their form depending on the case. There are 6 cases and 6 different forms for each noun in the singular, as well as 6 in the plural. Just to use a simple word like mama, you need to memorize a table of 12 words. Verbs are even worse. Let's try the word go. The dictionary gives us 2 options: идти and ходить. And don't forget about the 6 basic verb forms. Я иду, ты идешь, они идут, and so on. Then there is the past, present, and future tense. Even a simple verb like go has dozens of different combinations to memorize. As you can see, it's not really your memory's fault. Even someone with a super memory would have trouble learning 1000 Russian words and all of the different forms. But hold on a minute. If that's true, how did hundreds of millions of people, native Russian speakers, manage to memorize so many tables? I bet you already know the answer. Native speakers don't memorize words and tables. They absorb it with a different method. I still meet a lot of adults who think, if I just memorize a lot more words, I'll become fluent. If that is how you think, you might be surprised, but this method for learning a language was first used hundreds of years ago, way back in the Middle Ages. Imagine a classroom, students squished into their desks while a strict teacher walks up and down. No one is allowed to do anything except study. The students are reading something out loud together. It's a gloomy atmosphere. What are they doing? They are learning Latin, which was already a dead language. We've been sent back in the Middle Ages. This is where the grammar translation approach to learning a language was born. Students were taught grammar rules and memorized thousands of words. But there was zero conversation in the language. It wasn't necessary, of course. But there is another option. You can learn an alive language with the goal of being able to hold conversations, interact with the culture, and meet real people. We also know that native Russian speakers never need to memorize thousands of grammar tables. And they definitely don't spend hours memorizing Russian words one by one. You can use the same approach. First you learn a new word, just like a baby would. Then you learn how to use it correctly. Only after that should you look at a table or rule to confirm that you are doing it in the right way. Never do it in the other way around, unless you want to make life harder for yourself. Let's pick up a regular old dictionary or list of words. In 3 steps, we will turn it into an effective, enjoyable learning tool. Here's the list. We've got a Russian word followed by a translation. First step. The translation is what stops you from doing effective work. Mixing two languages in one piece of information slows your brain down by several times. Here's some proof in case you don't agree with me. First, count to 10 in English. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then, do it in Russian or any other language that you know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pretty easy, right? Now, count to 10, naming the number first in English, then in Russian. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Was that more difficult? It took me about 5 times longer. More importantly, it took a lot of energy and it wasn't much fun for my brain. You do the same thing to your brain every time you're trying to learn Russian words with a translation. So, we need to get rid of the translation. But how can anyone understand a new word if there is no translation? No, I'm not suggesting that you learn words without understanding what they mean. There is a very simple solution. You need to put words there where they belong. You need to put them in context. The context should be either written text or audio. The definitions for a lot of words can be understood outside of context. Open up a dictionary and you will find several options for each word. Sometimes there are dozens of answers. There is no point studying a word out of context. That's the first transformation. Now you can use a relevant Russian text instead of a list of words with translations. There's nothing wrong with translating a paragraph or story. You just shouldn't mix two languages together. Okay, so we've put our words in context. Now we need to take the next step, which will improve our productivity by 4 times. For example, suppose we've circled the word пройти, pass, while reading in the phrase как пройти в библиотеку. How do I get to the library? We know the words как, библиотека, and the preposition в. To understand пройти, we either figure it out based on the context or look in a dictionary. Next, take a pen and mark the entire phrase. Как пройти в библиотеку. Just like that, you've increased your language learning productivity by 4 times. I didn't come up with this number myself. It's a number that language researchers came up with. Are you worried that it's going to be more difficult to learn a long phrase rather than a single word? Is this approach really more effective? Well, let's look at our example more closely. Now, if you ever need to ask someone how to get to a library in Russia, you won't need to remember how to conjugate the verb пройти. You won't think about which preposition to use, в, к, до. You won't need to think about which case библиотека is supposed to take. Instead of struggling to figure out what to say, you will have no trouble stopping someone on the street and asking them how to get to the library in perfectly normal Russian. There is one more step. It's really obvious, but for some reason people don't always think about it. Are you only going to use the phrase «как пройти в библиотеку» in emails and text messages? Won't you need to say it out loud someday? If so, we need to add audio to the text. But what if you are a visual learner? It's easier for you to remember information with your eyes. Well, when you read a word, your vocal muscles experience micro vibrations. So even if you only learn how to write a word without saying it out loud, your brain will invent how to pronounce the word. Unless you listen to the correct pronunciation first, your own pronunciation probably won't be very good. Most likely you will have an accent and say it slowly. It's really important that you listen to how new words are pronounced. Our materials for learning vocabulary have changed. We are using an audio with a text now. It's okay to have a translation of the text. We are learning complete, ready-to-use phrases. That's a little bit different than being told to memorize 20 words for your next lesson, isn't it? In fact, you should never even think about memorizing words when learning Russian. It's just not the best or quickest way to become fluent. So, what did we learn? It's impossible to learn Russian by memorizing words. There are too many different forms, a person's memory isn't able to handle even a basic amount of words. Stop memorizing words. Learn whole phrases in a context instead. This will be much more productive, plus you will learn how to use proper grammar. If you read a word without first hearing how it should sound, your brain will create its own poor pronunciation. Here's your assignment. Find something that you'd like to listen to and read. An audiobook with text will work. The vocabulary shouldn't be too difficult, as long as there are a few words in each paragraph that you don't understand. That's perfect for now. Listen, read, mark phrases, and of course, review it many times. You may need to review the text 5, 10, or even 20 times. That's absolutely normal. Believe it or not, we won't need any secret methods or fancy technology to get some pretty amazing results from our brains. See you next time. Thank you for coming along.